Hi, welcome to Big Guy Boards. I'm Scott, and this is the Torq Pod Mod. I'll start by talking a bit about a collaboration between Channel Islands and Torq. So the Pod Mod is originally a Channel Islands shape, and it was kind of meant as a kind of just a step above a grovel board, almost like a performance-y grovel board, or just below your short board. And above your grovel board. Quite a versatile board, really successful. And then they've had a collaboration with Torq, and Torq have applied their Lite technology, which it's effectively similar to epoxy, but it's just absolutely bulletproof construction. I've been riding the board for quite a while now, and there's literally not a mark on it, no pressure marks, nothing, and it just feels really sturdy as well, and quite light. It responds similar to epoxy. I won't go into all the details about the construction. You can just look that up, but I've been really impressed with it. I've not used it before, and it's something I'd definitely use again. So when I got the board, I wasn't really sure what to make of it really, what kind of conditions it would go in. So I tried it in all kinds of different conditions. I couldn't work out whether it was more of I didn't think it was an all-out groveler. And I couldn't work out whether it was kind of sits just above your grovel board. Part of me thought maybe it would work in more solid waves. So I just started riding it in anything I could. I was taking it in all the time. So I started in smaller waves. Initially I had it set up as the thruster, and that didn't really work. I just couldn't get a drive. I thought because it was slightly higher volume, that might be enough to kind of float me and get it going in really small, weaker waves. But that didn't initially work. I tried another day when I wasn't filming. I then tried it as a quad with the same fins, and that worked a lot better. Just got a bit more square, and it just felt a lot better. So if you're planning on groveling with this board, I'd definitely set it up as a quad. And then the keel fin set, that made a ridiculous amount of difference. That just gave me loads of square, and I could ride it in, you've probably seen the video, but around kind of starting at around stomach to chest high, and it did work with that, with the right fins. As well, I didn't have my foot placement quite right either. That's something I found with this board. It took me a while to get used to the foot placement, and I think that's partly because the nose is so wide. Usually if I have this much width in the nose in front of me, I'm used to being on something a bit shorter, so I was kind of popping up just in front of or just on the front part of the tail pad, maybe just in front, and then if I started getting my feet over the fins, I could really start driving, and that helped as well. So it took me a while to get used to it, but that depends on the size of the board as well that you're going to ride. After the surfing it on some smaller days, we actually had a really solid swell, and I just thought I'd try it. Again, I wasn't sure what sort of conditions it goes in. I wanted to try it on everything and get a good feel for kind of what kind of board it was. And actually, the really solid, it was more of a slow open face kind of wave, and I was really surprised actually. I got one absolute screaming ride where I was just absolutely flying down the line. So in solid conditions it does go, but I think it gets to a point where the tail just has a bit more float. There's loads of foam right through the tail. There's loads of foam right through the board. I'll talk about that in a minute, but right through the tail, and the width in the tail just gives too much lift. As soon as you get to a certain size wave, the wave's pushing the board along so much that the tail lifts too much, and I just don't trust the bottom turn. It feels like it's just going to slightly skate out compared to a more traditional shortboard. But after the bottom turn and just kind of going down the line on the open face, it does feel quite good. But I think the upper limit for me is just getting above head high really. Anything kind of head and a half, two overhead, anything more than that, I wouldn't really feel comfortable on the board. And I definitely, after riding it in some solid waves, not quite that big, but well overhead, I'd definitely be going for a different board. So for me, the range for this is kind of more, it is very versatile. It's got a big range, but it's kind of just above proper groveling, so stomach, chest high, then up to overhead. So all those conditions, and again, as I said, you play around with the fins, and you can get it working in really different conditions. Well, I'm just going to talk a bit about what the board felt like to surf. So I mentioned the volume. This is a bit more volume than I'm used to, and you can really feel it even under the arm and just on the rails, right through, up through the nose. It just packs in heaps of volume. And looking back, if I was to go for it again, I'd definitely go for the the step down, which is the 6.2. I think the construction makes the board feel more floaty than it is. So I'd definitely recommend, if you're looking at volume with this, if you have a choice and you're thinking, do I go the kind of bigger or smaller one, I'd definitely step down to the smaller one, because it's definitely got a few more litres, 2, 3, maybe 4 more litres of float than you would expect. So in smaller waves, that was brilliant, and that's what, especially when you're a bit more heavy like myself, you need that extra float to get down the line. As soon as the waves started to get a bit better, the board started to feel a bit clunky, and that's not the fault of the board itself, it's just the volume and me not being used to riding, having so much foam, especially along the rail, as I'm used to. But I think I'd love to ride the 6.2, I think it is, a step down from this. I think I'd absolutely love it. I think it'd be a really versatile board. It'd be more like a daily driver, kind of chest high to probably a bit more overhead. It would probably go in, if I step down the board, it would probably go in slightly bigger waves than this one. Something else that I also noticed, and slightly better waves, was, again, because it's a bigger board and there's loads of foam right up through the nose, and there's quite a bit of width in the nose, is the swing weight. So swing weights, when you're turning the board, and it's kind of a pendulum effect, and the more foam you have up on the front of the board, it just takes longer to get the board around, and that's for kind of maneuvers like re-entries, or if you're kind of out on the open face carving. And I really noticed the foam out on front, and if I came down a few inches and dropped a bit of volume, I think that would make a huge difference. I'm going to use this footage to demonstrate what I mean about swing weight. So this board is the same volume as the 6.6 pod board, nearly, but it's considerably shorter, and hopefully you can see the difference that makes. This is the board I'm riding in the footage. This is an ETC Unicorn. So this is 6 inches shorter, but it's almost the same volume. This is around 45, 46 litres. And the difference by having less swing weight in front of you makes a massive difference to being able to flick the board around, and just the kind of radius of your turns and coming off the top and stuff. So I just wanted to illustrate the difference between having, you know, where the foam's located on the board and how it affects the swing weight. Now, that's not saying it's always a bad thing to have more foam up the front, especially for paddling into waves, and if you want big kind of drawn out turns, it could be great. But for me, at that size, there was just too much foam up front, and it just felt a bit sluggish on the turns. Well, not sluggish, but a bit slow coming round. So that's another reason why I'd definitely come down in size, and I think I'd absolutely love the 6.2. So who would this board suit? The one really good thing about, well, one of the really good things about this board is how versatile it is. So if you're a beginner or transition into intermediate, maybe you're coming off a bigger board and looking for one of your first short boards, this would be perfect for that, especially the 6.6. As I said, it's around 47 litres, or maybe even a 6.2, depending on your size. This would be ideal. It's got enough volume to float you, so it won't be completely alien after stepping down off a bigger board, but at the same time, you'll still be able to turn it around. The really good thing about these Torq boards as well is the price point is really competitive, and much cheaper than you'd expect to pay for a PU or even a standard epoxy board. And that's going to be really good for you to maybe as a transition board. And as I said, although it's relatively competitive price, it's an absolute bulletproof board, and it's going to last forever. So it's a board you might transition on and then keep for, you know, smaller conditions, or just have there and not want to get rid of, because it's just going to stay in immaculate condition. If you're more of an intermediate or intermediate plus surfer, it's going to be a really good board as well. It's the kind of board you want and just keep in your quiver. Again, relatively inexpensive, but it can sit there. For me, it's sitting just below my performance shortboard, so when the waves get decent, you know, overhead, head and a half plus, I'd be on a PU shortboard. But the waves are a bit generally what they're like in the UK. This board's perfect, and yeah, for UK surfers, you know, 90% of the time, this is the board you're going to be riding. And if you mess around with the fins, ride it as a quad or a thruster, it goes really well as both. I'd say the quad, as it starts to get smaller, and then mess around with keel fins as well for turn it into a really good all-out grovel board. Just to give a bit more detail on the fins I'm riding, this is the Goliath 5-fin set, so it's quite a neutral template. It's just slightly more upright, and these are what you'd probably say a XL or double XL fin. So I'm 115 kilos, 250 pounds roughly, or about 18 stone. So I just need a slightly bigger fin, so I'm using the Goliath fins. Yeah, so the 5-fin with going between the quad and the thruster. And then when the waves get, like when I start to grovel, the keel fin actually works in this board. I was unsure looking at it initially, but the keel fin goes great as well. It's kind of in that middle ground where it suits both kind of fins. So it's not an all-out grovel board, but it works with the keel as well as a more traditional template. So yeah, I've been using the Goliath XL keel fin set as well to grovel with. So to summarise, it's a great board. I love it. It's really versatile. It's got a really good range of conditions it will go in, depending on messing around with the fins. It's got bulletproof construction, and especially at a really competitive price. As I say, I'd definitely go down in volume. If I was to get one again, which I think I will, I'm going to look at the 6.2. I'll probably do a follow-up video on that. I think the 6.2 is going to be just ridiculous, and I think I'll just ride that all the time, pretty much in the UK. It'll just sit below my shortboard, and like I say, 90% of the time I think I'd be on this. So it's a great board. If you want more info on the board or the construction, visit the Torq website, and if you're looking at getting one, Tiki website would be a good place to start, or there's loads of retailers that do them. I'll put some links in the descriptions if you want to look out for that. Thanks for watching.